Are in the right place. We're here for another one of Warp's travels around the world. This time we're going to the Andes and parts nearby. And we're happy to have you here with us today. I think we have probably, oh, I see someone wearing a skull cap or a beanie. It must be cold, cold, cold where you are. Where are you, Wake Wheeler? Is it the cold north?
I'm in Oregon. Yeah, it's frosty on the ponds.
I happen to be visiting Ocean Springs, Mississippi, which is on the Gulf Coast here. I've been at a workshop with a couple of friends of mine at Kurt Grabowski's house. I don't know if any of you know her, but she's a wonderful graphic textile artist. And so we're learning all sorts of things about deconstructed screen printing, which I will not share today, but perhaps in the future. Thank you for coming to the program today. It's going to be all about Andean textile arts, which I think some of you may know a little bit about, but you're going to know a lot about it. This very robust, long-lived, and transformative organization, really, that we all may have contributed to in years past, but now we're going to hear more about what they are doing today and into the future. So I'm going to give another couple minutes before we start the program, but Kelsey, why don't you talk a little bit about what Warp has coming up,
Great.
and then we'll take it away.
Okay, thank you, Judy. So first I want to welcome everyone. Nice to see you all. Welcome to Warp members and guests that we have today. Thank you, Judy, for being here as our moderator, and thank you to Anita, Ginger, and Marilyn for being here to share about ATA. I'm Kelsey Wiskirchen. I'm Warp's Executive Director, and if you're new to Warp, we are an international textile networking organization. I'm going to share our website and just very briefly introduce you to a couple of other opportunities that we have at the moment. So our website, if you'd like to learn more about Warp, is weavearealpiece.org. When you go to our homepage, we have a lot of resources, but right on the homepage, I just want to highlight that our other upcoming events are all right here on the front page. So right now we have going on our biggest fundraiser of the year, which is our online international textile auction. And this is all wonderful textiles, books, some jewelry, all items that are donated by Warp members. And the proceeds go directly to support Warp's programs. In addition to that, this year we also have 10 really beautiful hand-woven overshot blankets that were made by students at Haywood Community College, which is in North Carolina. And the proceeds of these blankets are actually going directly to support relief for Hurricane Helene. So I really encourage you to visit our website. You can click on this link and see the auction items and participate as a bidder if you'd like to. You'll also find other upcoming events right on our homepage. The program that you're attending today is our Continuing Textile Traditions monthly panel discussion. That's always free and open to all and happens once a month. And then we have other Warp member programs that are just for members. So we have a new program that's a networking roundtable. So for members to connect and discuss around a particular theme. Our launch program this month is around sustainability of textile traditions. So if you're a member, please sign up for that and come join us for that great conversation. And it'll go on. You'll see our other programs and also information about our annual meeting, which is our yearly conference. And registration is now open for our 2025 annual meeting, which will be June 4th through 8th at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. This is a picture of a quilter at Gee's Bend, Alabama, where we'll be visiting and hearing about their community and their quilting traditions. So lots of great programs coming up this year and lots of great resources on the website. So again, thank you for joining, and I'm going to turn it back over to Judy.
All right. Some of you I recognize from previous programs, and some of you are new today. So I'll just let you know that we keep the pictures of everyone open because our speakers like to see who's here. And if you have any questions, we ask you to put them in the chat. I'll monitor the chat as we go along today. And if there's something really immediate, like a clarifying question for the speaker, I'll interrupt. But otherwise, we'll hold the questions until each of the three speakers has said their piece, and then we'll have questions and a group discussion. I think that's it. If somebody accidentally unmutes themselves and starts singing an opera aria or something to us, Kelsey will quickly mute you. So no worries. I heard that giggle. I don't know who that was, but Kelsey's on it. So that's kind of the way we roll with this program. So we have three presenters, and they have one PowerPoint program. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them first before we get started. And then Marilyn will kick us off. And Marilyn Murphy, let me start with her. I've known Marilyn longest. I've met her at probably my first WARP conference, which was many moons ago in Blue Ridge Assembly in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And she's established, she joined ATA, Andean Textile Arts, as a board member in 2023. She's a tremendous advocate for preserving craft communities and traditions and knowledge all over the world, and a lifelong supporter for all of us. She currently produces global textile-related content with clothroads.com and was president of Interweave Media, owned Chicago's Weaving Workshop, and founded the Textile Arts Center. So she's now the president of ATA, which we're going to hear about today. Can you guys hear that train? Sorry about that. There's trains that run near here. Anyhow, she's also a selection committee member for the International Folk Art Market. So she's in this up to her ears and always has been. So Marilyn is going to be a terrific leader for the conversation and can answer all sorts of things for us. She's joined by Anita Osterhaug, who is editor emerita of Handwoven Magazine. She's also now writing books, as well as still doing some editing. She loves art and culture of traditional societies and the wisdom and benefits they bring to modern life. As a board member of ATA, weaving connects her with another of her passions, half a world away, where she works to support Andean weavers in Peru and Bolivia. So she's ATA's vice president and chair of its marketing committee. And our third panelist today is Ginger Jones. And Ginger, I love what she wrote. She weaves together her commitment to women's empowerment, traditional arts, cross-cultural understanding, and environmental sustainability as a nonprofit fundraiser for educational and environmental organizations for nearly 30 years. And actually, that sounds like a description of a lot of the WARP members that I've come to know and love over the years. Ginger has worked and traveled in Latin America, Africa, Nepal, Russia, Asia, and she's the chair of ATA's fundraising committee. So you're about to hear the whole story. And Marilyn, I think you're going to get us started. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Thank you for attending today to learn about Andean textile arts as we enter our 25th anniversary of supporting the weavers of the Andes in their efforts to preserve and revitalize their textile traditions. ATA formed as a nonprofit in 2000. And at that time, the seeds of our history had already been planted, beginning in 1976, when American anthropologist Ed Frankenmont and ethnobotanist Chris Frankenmont had moved to Chinchero, Peru. Among their neighbors was a 14-year-old Quechua weaver, Nilda Kayanapa, whose family welcomed them into their community and began teaching them the local ways, including weaving. The Frankenmonts shared Nilda's passion for preserving her textile heritage and lent support in many ways. This period in Peru was also one of civil unrest, with the guerrilla war of the Shining Path, and at a time when the Quechua way of life was in danger. Modernization was underway, and many young people were leaving their childhood homes for new opportunities in the cities. There was a prejudice against the old ways, and fearing discrimination, villagers were reluctant to wear their traditional clothing. Knowledge of traditional dyeing, spinning, and weaving was also quickly fading, and along with that, a livelihood many Andean people, especially women, depended on to survive. At this time, there were others who met Nilda and shared her passion. Here's a photo of Nilda on the left and her mother, Guadalupe Alvarez, on the right. This was a recent photo, and Guadalupe recently passed away. However, on a 1982 trip to Peru, writer and weaver Livy Van Buskirk and her husband David met Nilda and learned of the local weavers' efforts to revive their traditions. Returning to the US, they started to spread the word through presentations and exhibits, emphasizing that a Peruvian textile culture, more than 2,000 years old, was on the verge of being lost forever. Also during this time, Ed and Nilda traveled to museums and colleges throughout the US, giving workshops, lectures, and demonstrations, educating the public on Andean textile techniques. In 1994, Nilda invited children from her village of Chinchero to assemble and demonstrate their weaving skills. Only 3 or 4 of them could weave with minimal skills. Nilda said, quote, "In the next few years, weaving will disappear in Chinchero. The children have stopped making hakamas, which are the little ribbons of weaving, and aren't learning our village patterns," end quote. Clearly, by looking at this photo from 2002, the Chinchero and other hakama groups have formed, and that was the raw beginning of what now is the Young Weavers group. However, at that time, the Van Buskerts began buying every hakama the children could make, and that's when the Hakama Club of Young Weavers was formed. In 1996, the Van Buskerts provided 5 years of seed money to begin forming the Center for Traditional Textiles of Cusco with Nilda as the director. Also in 1996, another couple, Tim Wells and Betty Dorr, befriended Nilda and began their support of CTTC. Over the next 4 years, with dedication of these core people and others, CTTC completed its legal formation, and the U.S. nonprofit, now ATA, was also created for educational and fundraising purposes. ATA spearheaded the capital campaign of purchasing the building on Avenida Sol, where the center now resides, which is inclusive of a store, exhibition space, weaving demonstrations, offices, and inventory storage. In this image, Nilda is on the left with Betty Dorr next to her on the right. This is the opening ceremony of the center on Avenida Sol, and the inset is this small museum that still exists to this day. For the past 25 years, our work remains focused on education, outreach, and economic development. Through fundraising for our grant program, we provide financial support in these areas, which Anita will talk about shortly. And we have achieved this work with very committed, hands-on board of directors and dedicated committee volunteers. Over to you, Anita.
Thank you, Marilyn. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the organizations who we work with in the Andes. The first and a relationship that continues today clearly is the Center for Traditional Textiles of Cusco. Next slide, please, Marilyn. You can see in this on this slide where the communities are located around Cusco. There are 10 communities that are members of CTTC right now, and they are spread from Acha Alta in the north, which you see there, to Santo Tomas in the south. And a lot of them are to the east, and many of those are on passes up in the Andes on passes where the road goes across to the jungle side of the Amazon side of the Andes. The CTTC store and museum first opened in 2005, as Marilyn mentioned. During COVID, while the center was closed, through our support and the support of other foundations, the center underwent a revitalization. So after all these years, with new displays and lighting and information and a new weaving demonstration area, and this is a photo taken during the grand reopening ceremony, which we were fortunate enough to be there for. Another aspect of our support and of what CTTC is doing is the Weaving Center in Chinchero. Chinchero is outside of Cusco. It's on the main route to Machu Picchu. So many people pass through there, and it is, of course, Nilda Cayanaupa's hometown. You see her there on the left. This is during a dyeing demonstration at the Weaving Center there. The center hosts classes and dyeing workshops. It has a retail store which carries products from all the communities. There is a small museum which called the Traditional House, which is actually built like a traditional Andean family's home, so visitors can see how families have lived traditionally. And with funding gathered through ATA, it has a new exhibit room and a classroom space, climate-controlled storage for the CTTC's textile collection, and an archive documenting traditional patterns. And then there is a room to store dye stuffs for all the communities. So, and this is a picture here of the Chinchero Weaving Center as it exists today. And I think the next slide, yeah. And this is another photo of the courtyard, and you can see there two weavers demonstrating how they wind warp to weave a piece. And what they're doing is throwing balls of yarn back and forth, and then they sort of cross in the middle. So this is a quick way for two people to wind a warp for a long piece. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk just briefly about the communities, and just not covering all 10, but just a few. So in this slide, we have at the top, we have a picture of weavers from Santo Tomas, which is the furthest from Cusco. It's about a 7-hour drive to the south. When the Spanish brought the horses, there was developed quite a horse culture there. So you see the ladies' hats look a little like cowboy hats, and their weaving very often is two-sided designs featuring horses. They're very charming. On the lower right is a weaver from Acha Alta. That's the community furthest to the north. Their specialties are weaving potato sacks with camelid fibers, which aren't done as much anymore, but they are beautiful. They're in natural colors and quite collectible. And then they weave chuyos, the hats, with baubles, and they do 2 and 3 color weaving. On the left, the ladies walking there are from Acopia. Acopia is just south of Cusco, and it is their weaving had almost been lost in Acopia before they joined the Center for Traditional Textiles as one of their communities. Now they are now weaving simple ponchos and blankets with stripes. Those are called yikya, and you see the ladies with their mantas on their back. Those are examples, I think in some cases, of their blankets. Next slide, please. Okay. Here, the woman on the left is from Chawaitiri, one of the ones communities east of Cusco on the old road to the jungle. Here, the men weave ponchos. This is one of the communities where the men do a lot of weaving. They weave ponchos that with very elaborate designs of flowers and lakes, and they're often in natural camelid colors. The women weave smaller blankets, they weave scarves and bags, and they use a pre-Columbian technique that produces designs on both sides of the textile with the colors reversed. Very beautiful. Oh, thank you. Okay. The man in the middle is in Sayak. They mostly weave plain weave, but then they embroider designs. So you can see him with a piece in natural camelid colors, probably alpaca. And you can see in the stripe on the right that he is embroidering those designs on top of that plain weave stripe. On the right is a picture from Huacatinco, the lady with the baby. They were also not doing a lot of weaving before they joined the center. But they were knitting very elaborate beaded chuyos, the hats. And you can see on the top of the woman's hat, and then there's a man you can sort of see peeking out on the left, and probably on the baby's hat, the white designs. These are patterns with tiny beads. You can see them also on the clothing. And the women are working to recover their traditional techniques. This last picture is from Pitumarca. This is considered the community with the finest and most complex textiles because the Inca had actually established a weaving center in the area to weave for royalty. They are masters of a number of techniques, including something called scaffold weaving. And then they do a color that a special technique where they have designs in 4 different colors. And the Inca are actually said to have woven with up to 7 colors. And then they do a lot of knitting and braid, sling braids from their alpaca yarn. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our partners in Bolivia. This is a newer partnership. Although in 1984, Nilda and the Van Buskirks went to Bolivia and met with an organization called ASUR to learn from the work they had done in organizing the Hulka weavers and weavers in Tarabuco. So ASUR actually predates the CTTC. In Bolivia today, we're working with 2 NGOs, ASUR, which started its work actually in 1986, aimed at reviving traditional textiles and generating additional income for indigenous weavers in Hulka communities and Tarabuco communities, which are in the area of Sucre. And then also Arte Campo, which is in the lowlands of Bolivia and brings together a number of community associations for intercultural dialogue, economic development, and mutual support. And we also are beginning to work with the Museum of Ethnography and Folklore, which is in La Paz and works with some indigenous groups. We are also in early stages of looking at possible partners in Ecuador. That's going to take some time to develop. I'm going to turn it back over to Marilyn to talk about some of the projects we've supported.
Okay, we've supported many over these 25 years. So let's start with one of the first big ones that some of you may have attended in the past. CTTC and ATA have partnered on 3 Tinkuis in 2010, 2013, and 2017. These are large international gatherings that celebrate textile traditions from Peru and around the world. It brings together artists and enthusiasts to learn from each other and share their knowledge and experiences. One of the stellar aspects of these gatherings brings together the weavers from dozens of different cultures from all the Americas. And in 2013 and 17, weavers from Laos, India, Indonesia, and the UK attended and all gave special presentations. Hands-on classes, informal sharing of tools and techniques, community presentations, and so much more richness happened over these 4 days. There was also intensive training for just the CTTC weavers on revitalization of pre-Columbian techniques. Here, Jennifer Moore, who's a master weaver and teacher of double weave and also an ATA board member, she works with a small group of weavers to reintroduce the double weave technique. Other masters taught Paracas looping and anilado, which is a knotting technique used in pre-Columbian Andean four-corner hats. The young weavers are the future keepers of the textile heritage. These two young ones are from Pitumarca, a community that's revitalized more pre-Columbian techniques than any of the others and has trained many of the other groups. Each of the 10 communities has a young group of spinners and weavers. Presently, there are about 225 young weavers, and they meet on Saturdays or Sundays at their weaving shelters. It's a time for socializing and learning and sharing weaving techniques. It's also a good time to catch up on the local gossip. And the groups have training and educational goals, as it's important for the sustainability of the villages to see it as an economic opportunity and for the young weavers to be excited about their heritage and carrying it forward. So the centers and community development. In each community, these centers have been a special project since ATA's inception. From 2001 to 2004, we provided funding for shelters and have continued to support the building of others as new communities have joined CTTC. Adobe walled structures with roofs and sanitary facilities, these shelters have been crucial to the success of the center. They provide the weavers a place to come together regularly to learn, work, and to support each other, protected from the elements. Each association governs its cooperative collectively and elects its leadership to manage finances and decision-making, thereby encouraging the weavers to develop managerial and marketing skills. We have also funded special projects in Bolivia that Anita's mentioned since the beginning of our visits there in 2019. Anita, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how our process works and mention a couple of other things that we have funded. So every year we take grant proposals from the various NGOs that we work with in the Andes. These proposals are evaluated based on their fit with our mission, impact in the communities, likelihood of success, the sustainability of what the gains they're trying to make. We practice participatory grant making, which is a way of having conversations with the NGOs and with the indigenous weavers about their priorities and stuff. We don't want to dictate to them. We are supporting them and revitalizing their traditions. So on the left, you see a picture of one of these revitalization projects. These weavers are holding a piece of a revitalized technique known as tikia watai, which is a combination of a kind of shibori dyeing, you see the white designs, that was actually practiced by the Inca and pre-Columbian cultures, and then scaffold weaving, discontinuous warp weaving, which was also pre-Columbian. This has been a really quite a long project and quite an accomplishment, and that is a beautiful piece. In the middle, we talked a little bit about the Young Weavers program for the children and youth. A lot of the Young Weavers use their weaving to fund education, and we now support an internship program at CTTC. So some of the Young Weavers come to CTTC as interns in the business, and the young woman here is one of those interns. They gain business skills and leadership skills to help them in their future careers, often in tourism or education to help their communities. And some of them we expect will become future leadership in the organization. Next, aha. And then the woman on the right, this is one of the communities that Arte Campo in Bolivia works with. This is a group of weavers who weave palm fronds known as hippie hapa, the palms. And this is one of the leaders of the NGO showing some of the palm fronds that are about to be dyed. So this is another project in Bolivia. This is a dye day. One of the projects that we have supported through CTTC doing is the recovery of natural dyes. And this is women, because in the 70s, when weavers were weaving traditional, often weaving traditional designs with synthetic yarns with obviously synthetic colors. So these are a group of women in Chinchero doing at a dye pot, dyeing with it's red, so it's cochineal. And I'm going to turn it back over to Marilyn now.
All right. So here we go. Let me advance the slide here. So this is the textile traditions of the Peruvian highlands. During the pandemic and political unrest in Peru, ATA had to quickly look at ways that we could continue to raise awareness and funds for the center and the weavers when there was no tourism and no funds coming to the weavers and their families. But thanks to the internet and Zoom, we began Textile Talks, a book club. We moved our guild program online and offered benefit programs with CTTC. We started an online auction and so much more. So the Textile Traditions of the Peruvian Highland was the guild program, and this can be presented to any group really who want to learn about the Peruvian indigenous textiles and the skilled artisan who makes them. It's a recorded video program with the cooperative members of CTTC. And the focus is on the preservation and revitalization of their textile arts. You can rent this program. It's about an hour long, and we're happy to present it. Also, as I mentioned, in 2021, we and all organizations adapted to the online world of remoteness. We introduced quarterly presentations plus special benefit programs. This certainly has expanded our reach, making it possible for thousands of people to learn about Andean pre-Columbian textiles, such as the intricate knotting system of quipus, paracas looping, and forest selvage cloth, to contemporary artists such as Amar Copacabana. We've armchair traveled to the sacred mountains of Apuasangate. We've gone along the great Inca trails to the Amazon, and so much more. We also realize that not everybody can travel to the Andes, so why not enjoy fellowship with like-minded cultural and textile enthusiasts here in the US? We launched a behind-the-scenes program with access to some amazing Andean textiles at both the George Washington University Textile Museum and the archives at the National Museum of the American Indian, plus hosted curator-led tours of 2 special exhibits. We plan to continue offering a yearly special access program. We've also facilitated many gatherings of friends in the US when Nilda's been here for special programs, exhibit, and textile sales. A fundraising initiative that we started was Auction, a Bid for the Future, another opportunity to educate people about Andean textiles. We had the guidance of our expert advisor, Ann Rowe, to set up guidelines in terms of what we can accept and what we won't, such as no pre-Columbian pieces. And we've asked for verification on documentation on where these pieces have come from. We've had some very exquisite collection to start with during the first year from our founding director, Libby Van Buskirk, and also 2 years later, our founding director, Tim Wells, who had passed away, leaving us with amazing donations. Tim and his wife, Betty Dorr, who was also another long-term ATA board member, they had moved to Cusco in 2001, and they had volunteered with CTTC. And Ginger, I'm going to turn this last section over to you.
Thank you, Marilyn. So as Marilyn and Anita have described earlier, one of the mainstay programs of ATA is our tours. Our first tour was back in 2002. And since then, former board member Pam Art and many others have grown that to 1 to 2 tours annually, including the Tencuis. And we then expanded to Bolivia in 2018. After a few years break for COVID and subsequent civil unrest in Peru, we're back on track now with 1 tour to Bolivia and Peru each year. And we are exploring expanding to the Ecuador, another Andean country, and creating trips that appeal to younger visitors, possibly shorter programs that have more of a workshop focus, homestays, or perhaps would be in collaboration with academics. So what distinguishes an ATA tour? ATA doesn't offer kind of the typical tourist tour, but a more responsible, authentic, and respectful interaction with the weavers and with the weaving communities we visit. Our partners in Peru are CTTC and travel agency partner Day Hikes Peru. Here's beloved owner and Day Hikes Peru guide Raul, who is Nilda's nephew and grew up in an extensive weaving family. These partners are the soul of our tours, and they provide those intimate visits to communities where they grew up, where they learned to weave, and when they are welcomed by their artists, friends, and families where they go back. Thus, we're also greeted this warmly, often with dancers, flower gardens, musicians, and it's really, truly a touching and humbling experience that all of our participants remember fondly. So what is a typical day visit to a weaving community like? They're full and fascinating, as Marilyn and Anita shared earlier. We encourage travelers to bring samples of their work for a show and tell to help break the ice. Weavers are fascinated with our different patterns, colors, and mittens made from dog fur from North America. Young weavers that Marilyn described are particularly curious about our phones and selfie photos, like teenagers the world over, but they also love learning how to use new techniques. On a recent trip, they were particularly interested in Canadian participants' French knitting cord dolly spool. These weavers are very curious about our activities here in the States and beyond. They want to know if we work in community like they do in Peru or solo. They are interested in if we work for a living or for fun. We've been spontaneous judges for a spinning contest, for the prettiest alpaca, and a spontaneous stand-up contest for who had the most children. So there's lots of laughter, questions, and respect both ways as we visit these communities. And there's always a surprise, including this day when we participated in this alpaca fertility blessing high on the Andean slopes and visited this farmer's rural home, very gracious home. The CTTC in Chinchero, which Anita described earlier, hosts us to visit their site with a dye workshop with the natural dyes, and we took home a rainbow of skeins. We visit a gracious family's homes with a traditional lunch, complete with the Peruvian specialty cuy, which is guinea pig. There's also time for supporting the local economy. We use that word rather than shopping, which is purchasing special pieces from the folks you've often met along the way. Now, to balance all these community visits, we also visit iconic historic cultural sites in country. In Peru, we obviously visit Machu Picchu and other archaeological sites in the Sacred Valley, like this one, which is the Moray Agricultural Amphitheater. It was basically a field lab where Incans practiced altitudinal diversity of crops on each of these different terraces. In Cusco, which was known as the center of the Incan world, we visit world-renowned museums, churches, and galleries. At CTTC, tour participants can have the opportunity to take classes there or workshops, and again, we leave time to support the local economy. And you're certainly not going to go hungry. There's often stops at specialty bakeries and great restaurants. Now, as I mentioned, in 2018, we expanded programs to Bolivia, and Bolivia and Peru have a lot in common. Geographically, they straddle the Andean highlands. Both were part of the Incan Empire. Ethnographically, they're both Quechua and Aymara speaking. Their textiles have been woven largely from the sheep's wool or camelid fibers from alpaca and vicuna. They both use natural dyes, notably cochineal. And there are also, though, interesting differences as we have learned visiting them over the years. As Anita described earlier, we do work with 3 partners in Bolivia, and these partners provide a similar entry into their local weaving communities. We particularly appreciated the warm welcome by the Haka weavers, which are well known for the red and black intricate patterns, which is there on the left-hand slide, and the mythical creatures reflecting their local flora and fauna. And similarly to Peru, we would like to balance these community trips with Bolivia's cultural and natural highlights, including the amazing Uni Salt Flats, which is the world's largest salt flat, called the Mirror of the Sky by the locals. So that's evidenced by this photo when a thin sheet of water on the salt flat reflects everything out of scale. We also visit a salt mine in Potosi, which is a World Heritage Site, and La Paz, which is Bolivia's high Andean business capital. We take to the skies in their cable car system. We visit the National Museum of Ethnography and Folklore and explore the Witches Market for potions, medicinal plants, and spiritual advice. And just like in Peru, you are not going to go hungry. There's lots of visits to local homes and communities, to small bakeries, and to world-renowned gourmet restaurants. So as we wrap up, you ask, how can you support ATA and Andean weavers? So obviously, we invite you to join us on a tour. A portion of all of our tours includes an outright donation to ATA and to the weaving communities. This year, we're going to be having a special tour in late October, which is celebrating the 25th anniversary there. And beyond the international tours, there's also the shorter US-based opportunities that Marilyn described earlier to special museum exhibits. So beyond tours, there's many more ways you can help. We are an all-volunteer organization and are always looking for more volunteers. First and foremost, you can serve on one of our committees, marketing, fundraising, educational programs, or help with grant writing or grant making. We're always looking for folks to help in that way. You can also host the textile traditions of the Peruvian highlands that Marilyn described earlier. It's a great opportunity to present to your guilds, to school programs, the local communities. And I know many of you have learned of ATA through that program. Attend one of our virtual programs, the Textile Talks. We have had a recent one visiting the Amana Museum of Pre-Columbian Textiles in Lima. We have virtual book clubs during COVID and are going to be hosting those again. If you like to entertain, You can certainly open your home to a small local gathering of ATA donors. And everyone can help by sharing your blogs and events on the social media accounts to help get the word out. Last but not least, please donate. Your gifts support the weavers, these weaving communities, to help keep their textile traditions alive. So please stay in touch. Visit our website at AndeanTextileArts.org or email us at info@AndeanTextileArts.org. There you can browse throughout the site and sign up for our ongoing newsletter, which will keep you up to date. On behalf of ATA, thank you for joining us so much today. We look forward to seeing you on a tour at one of our events, virtual or in person, and would love to get you more involved. Many thanks. And any questions? And Judy, tell us if we can run over or what y'all's policies are. We didn't talk about that. And Kelsey.
I have one quick question. When is the trip brochure going to be available for October?
We
We're
are
working-
working on that right now. Marilyn is actually going to be leading that group this year with Betty Dorr and Jan, who were former board members. And we're just finalizing some of the details, but it is due out soon.
Okay, and what and where is the museum exhibit you mentioned where there'll be Andean textiles included?
The Amano Museum. The Amano Museum is in Lima, and that's where we'll be starting our tour this year.
Okay, very good. I've got a couple more quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up. One was,
Oh, I see somebody, sorry, I just saw somebody comment, the exhibit on loss and absence at the Art Institute in Chicago. Was that the one you were asking about? It was one I just saw somebody mention that.
yes,
That'll be a fall.
that's the one she meant.
That's
For a
the fall. Yeah, that's
That's
at the
the
Art
fall.
Institute. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And several of us follow Abby Francamont on social media, and someone had asked whether you worked at all with her and were familiar what she's doing to teach spinning
Yes,
and weaving.
definitely. Abby, definitely. Abby was on the ATA board during the years that her mom was on the board. You know, Ed had passed away, Chris came on the board, and then Abby came on the board as well. And then, as you know, Abby moved to Peru. So she's down there, and she does some work with the center down there.
Oh, very good. A final question, and this might be the broadest of them all. Someone wanted to know if people from these communities that you're working with in Peru are immigrating, or can they make a living as textile artists in their own country?
Well, we can speak to the ones who we work with.
Yeah. That's what we're asking.
Definitely. Yeah, okay. I'll give an example. This one young woman that we met in Bolivia this last year, she comes from a family of 5 girls. Her mother had passed away, and her father very proudly said she has been, she's just graduating with a degree in dentistry. And she supported her education through her weaving. And so she met with us, and she was there doing the traditional halka weaving that she does, which was amazing. In the Center for Traditional Textiles, there's many of the weavers that CTTC works with. They support themselves through their weaving, but then they're also, you know, farmers, and they some of them absolutely have to do work in other ways. I don't know if they're emigrating, but many of the men have gone to work in the mining industry, and certainly during COVID, a lot of that has shifted. We asked the communities for an update on how many members there still are in their communities, and that we've seen that number fluctuate a lot in the last couple of years, so that they're able to, survive since COVID, and it's taking a while to get that back going. We don't know yet with Assur. They were just, when we were there a year ago, they were just going out into the communities to see how many weavers were still weaving, because it was the first time they were able to go the long distances to meet into the communities. And we should get that update now with their, they have to submit their grant from last year, their reply to let us know just how much of that has shifted. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry we don't have time for more questions today, but you can always find Marilyn or Anita or Krista or Ginger's contact information, I'm sure, on their website. And we encourage everyone to follow up and have a chance to see these fabulous textiles in person. It was a very interesting program today. Kelsey left because she lost power, not because she lost interest. So I'll speak for her and the War Board when I say thank you for coming this month, and I hope we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye all.
Thank you.